Constantine here for a very special It's Cup of Time presentation. Today I'm celebrating the 2-year anniversary of my getting the entire crate of Paiste Bronze Gongs. It was very exciting 2 years ago, August 5th of 2021. Paiste had to ship this massive crate on a pallet from California. They couldn't ship it to my house because that would have cost a fortune to have a special truck that had a lift gate and could drop it off in my driveway because it's a residential delivery. Fortunately, I was working for a music store at that time doing drum repairs and cleanup. And they have a big warehouse with a big dock, so I was able to have the whole crate shipped to their warehouse. And I remember anxiously tracking it and then finally got the call. It's here. It showed up. So I drove out there not knowing what to expect. Oh boy. And I get there and there's this pallet with this massive crate shrunk wrap to it. It's just gigantic crate. So I took a knife and cut all the shrink wrap away. Got somebody at the warehouse to help me lift it off. This is like 450 pounds worth of gongs and crate and accessories. Lift it off the pallet. Fortunately, it's on really nice wheels, so you can wheel it around. But getting them was one thing. Getting it home was a whole other thing. I have a minivan. Open the back of the van. It's like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this crate. This is huge. So I had to unpack the crate and then tip it over on its side and shove it in the back of the van. Then all the gongs and the other gear went in the middle seats. Got home, took the crate out, took all the gongs and accessories, put them in the house. And the crate has been living in my garden shed for the past 2 years because it's too big to get in my house, too big to get down here in my studio. Wow, I've got these gongs. I had already acquired one gong, the number 9 gong, when the previous October I was at Andy's Music in Chicago, and you can see the whole video series on that, where we opened the crate Andy had received in March of 2020 that we were supposed to come down and open up with Jens Zugar and a bunch of other area gong people, and we were supposed to open it up and have sort of a celebration. And then the whole COVID lockdown hit, and like the week before we were going to go down and do that. Had to cancel, and it's like, well, we'll just wait this out. Little did I know that it would be a long time before we could actually do it. So then I went down, and Andy and I, alone in his fabulous place, opening the crate, taking the gongs out, hanging them up, and testing them out. Like I said, there's a whole first series of videos on my experience at Andy's, my first experience with any of the bronze gongs. And from that, I got the number 9 because I felt it was a unique gong that would fit into my setup and not duplicate something I already had. Even though I very much loved the 2 earth types, I loved the water types, I felt that number 9, a completely new style of gong for Paiste, would, be the best one if I was going to get one gong, and I don't regret it. Fast forward to August of 2021, and here I am with this crate with 7 gongs in it, and it's crazy. So now I have 8 Paiste Bronze Gongs, 2 number 9s, and I made a series of videos back then, just a couple weeks after I got the gongs in August of 2021. So there's Paiste Series 2. I'll put a link down below for that. And I thought I would make a 2-year one, talk about my experiences, with all the gongs, play them some, and talk about how they may have changed. Because one of the factors with the B8 bronze that Paiste has wrestled with is that it changes over time. Whereas your typical Paiste nickel silver gong, pretty stable. 10 years later, it should pretty much be the same gong. Where the bronze gongs tend to change. And I have noticed some changes in mine. A couple of them have dropped in pitch, but not drastically. We're talking about maybe 2 cents on the tuner. I mean, nothing big. It's not like something's dropped like a third or something. But the pitches have gone down on a couple of them. Not drastically. The biggest thing I've noticed is how they respond and how they've opened up more as they've been played. How, like any gong, how they've opened up more over time, just because the metal is vibrating, the metal is settling in, and also because you learn how to play them better. I think that's one thing people often don't understand, is as we play a gong, there's 2 big factors. As we play a new gong, the gong will change some. It will settle in. It generally tends to open up more. And we notice that part. But the other part we don't notice is how we change. As we learn to play the gong, our approach to it changes. And that's probably the biggest thing I've noticed in these past 2 years, how my approach to all these gongs has changed. I've changed mallets that I use. I've changed the way that I play them. And just sort of just the overall idea of the B8 bronze. If anything, I guess I could say I've really learned how the B8 bronze gongs react. They're different than nickel silver. They're different than B20 bronze. They're different than titanium, stainless steel, aluminum. They have their own way. So after 2 years, I think I've pretty much got it down and know how they react. But what's the most interesting part is about how they vary so much. I've played in this whole time now, I've played a lot of different ones in person. I've listened to hundreds of videos on the web of different ones from all the main dealers across the globe who've posted videos of the bronze gongs they have in stock. I've listened to them and I've compared them. I've made notes. I have this massive spreadsheet on my computer about all this. And the big thing is they vary. You could buy 10 nickel silver symphonic gongs or nickel silver planet gongs of the same size and type, and there will be 10 of them that sound almost identical. There will be little subtle differences, but essentially they sound the same. You can get 10 bronze gongs, let's say 10 bronze number 0 or number 1 or whatever. Pick which model you want and get 10 of them lined up and play them all. You will probably have 5 or 6 different variations on sound. One thing is the pitch. The pitch changes dramatically on these gongs. I'm so surprised when I play other ones how it's like, wow, that is like a lot higher than the one I have, or that's lower than the one I have. And surprisingly, I have found some that sound almost exactly the same pitch as mine. But that pitch variation can be very drastic. So that's why it's hard with these. You know, I could take a nickel silver gong. I could say, I want a 30-inch Paiste symphonic gong. I know what it sounds like. I know I can order it from any dealer across the world. I could get it direct from Paiste, anywhere. It'll come to my door, I'll take it out, and it'll sound just like I knew it would sound. Whereas with these, I just go, I want a number 8 bronze gong, and I order it and I get it, and it's like, well, that's not what I thought it would sound like. So these are the type of gongs you really have to listen to in person because they vary a lot. The other big variation is in the feel of the gong and how it vibrates. I've really noticed that playing different ones. Some of them are much stiffer, take a little more oomph to get them to open up. Some of them are much more like flexible, malleable, and you just touch them and they're just like, they open. So there's a big difference in that. Again, with a nickel silver gong, I could get 5 Jupiter Planet gongs, 28-inch Jupiter gongs, play them. They're going to sound the same. They're going to feel the same. I get 5 of any of the bronze gongs, and they're going to feel different. So if you're looking for a bronze gong, if possible, play them in person. If not, if you go to somebody's website, listen to all of them they have videos of, because they will be different. And listen and listen and listen and see which one really, you are attracted to. So let's move on. I could talk all day on all this. One thing I did, I went over my videos from 2 years ago to listen to what I was, what they sounded like and what my approach was. And there are differences, but again, the sound's pretty much the same. But I think, as with anybody who plays and works with a gong, you're going to discover more sounds. You're going to be able to unlock more subtleties and that. So today, I feel I'm able to get more out of them than it was when I initially had them. And I'd had them for like 2 weeks when I made those first videos. So that's not a lot of time to get to know a gong. Okay, we're going to start with bronze gong number 0. Based on the original Sound Creation number 3, which was eventually named Earth, because that's what it reminded so many people of. It's dark, it's earthy. This one is very open. I feel it's loosened up quite a bit. It's dropped in pitch, like I said, about 2 cents. It's not a big deal, but it's really opened up. So let's have a go. Pretty much a D2. I like how the center gives you that nice full dark sound, but moving down here, it opens up some nice upper mid frequencies. And that's the one big difference with the bronze versus the nickel silver, as I explained in the previous videos. In the nickel silver, you get that classic Paiste kind of white noise shimmer, that whoosh, way up there in the frequency range. Here, the bronze gongs pretty much stay in the lows and the mids. So they are much darker and much more mids, really. So here, that frothy sound comes from the mids, not the highs. If that was nickel silver, there'd be all this high-end shimmer. Number 0, very sensitive. It's very flat. The membrane just vibrates so easily. It's easy to activate, as you could hear. Wonderful flumy gong. Now we want to look at bronze gong number 1, the sort of sister, companion, whatever gong to number 0. Again, based on the old Sound Creation number 3 earth type. The main difference you can see, I mean, there's 2 big differences. One, this is highly polished, very reflective, brilliant finish on it compared to the much darker finish here. But the big difference besides that, if you'll notice the number of hammer marks. And you can see how widespread they are on the number 0 and how close they are together on the number 1. There's many more hammer marks on here. They exhibit a very similar sound, but each have their own character. This one is a little more responsive. This one is a little stiffer. And the subtleties, to me, come in sort of the overtones that come out, whereas the pitches are pretty close. That's a D, and this is an E. So, we're pretty close there, and we're not that far off. I'm looking at about maybe 6 cents, 8 cents as I have it written down. Not that far. So number 1. Is just, the pitches are close on these 2. I've heard 0s and 1s that are like a third apart or a second apart. These are very close. But this has got much more upper hot or upper mids to it. Compare them here. Close to each other, but it's the subtleties, and I'm not sure how well it comes through over YouTube. In person, I can hear very distinct subtleties. I wouldn't necessarily use these together because I think they really cross over too much. But I'll take one or the other to a gig because they give me that nice dark sound with a really nice frothy mid-range. Number 0 and number 1. Okay, we have number 2 and number 4 up here. Both of these are loosely based on the old Sound Creation number 4, which became known as the water gong. They each have a slightly indented reverse boss. This one you can see is much bigger and much smaller here. So both of those are inward bosses. We've got the hammered and scraped zone here and the clear zone here with a couple of circles of light hammering around it. This one we have kind of a sloped edge, some deep hammer marks, and the radial etching. Very unique gongs, very unique sounds. I love the number 2. I use it all the time. The center gives you just this very deep, focused, full sound with some high harmonics coming out. It's very focused. And there you can hear those higher tones appearing. And even if I'm, striking fairly hard, the gong's not opening up because all of this, you could see the hundreds of small hammer marks here that have stiffened this whole center up. It's very rigid, whereas the number 0 we had just looked at was very flexible. This is very rigid. Now, most of the number 2s that I've heard are a lot higher in pitch. Surprised that this one is so low compared to many of the others I heard before I got this, and now especially since, a lot of them that I've heard, they have a much higher tone. If I move out, I get a little more splash in there. Still keeps that nice deep tone. And on the edge, that nice bright crash. And you can tell with that crash, you're basically activating this part of the gong. The center is not involved in it. There's no low pitch. It's just all this edge. I can bring in the center there. It's a very unique gong. Wonderful sounding. I use this one in my setup all the time, as well as the number 0. On to number 4, again based off of the number 4 water gong from the old Sound Creation. It's got a whole different sort of character. Very focused. I can feel the sound is very inward. Short, compact crash. You can hear it go, it's crash, and then it just kind of like pulls in. Like the number 2, if you play it out by the edge, you don't get that center tone, which on this one is not as dark, but we can hear that center tone. But if I come out here, it's mostly just that this edge is activated. Really intriguing crash sound. For this type of gong, it really closes up quickly. It's whoosh, and then it's still ringing, but it brings that volume down. It closes up quite a bit. 2 amazing gongs, just very different characters. Where the 0 and the 1 were very similar in character, these 2 are very different. So now we move on to number 6. And number 8. Number 6 here is based off of the standard symphonic gong. It has a slightly raised part here, so this center membrane is raised up from the edge, just like a symphonic. Big difference is it has the radial scrapings moving out from the center to the edge. It's much stiffer than a symphonic. I think a part of that is the B8 bronze is stiffer than nickel silver. And again, because it's B8, it's darker. It doesn't have those frothy highs. It stays in the lows and the mids, and it behaves more like a planet gong, but it has such a wonderful crash to it. Let's start out just in the middle. Very solid, focused. And again, if you listen, there's none of those highs. A little more force. Now we're activating more gong, but we're getting mids. There's none of that highs that a nickel silver gong would already be producing. So let's move down a little. Nice, dark, solid crash sound. Now listen to how long that one is ringing compared to the number 4, like I said, which is kind of like and closed up quite a bit, where this one just opens up and it's gone. Now listen to how long that crash is lasting compared to the number 4 that I said you hit it and it's crash, and then it's just it sort of pulls everything inward and shortens the crash, where this one just goes, it keeps going. That's a 28-inch gong. Very dark, very full, out of a 28. It's pretty amazing. Now this one is also great with a flumi. I think it helps with these radial scrapings. They create little ridges for the ball just to kind of ride on. Let's get this one going here. Very expressive. A lot of different sounds available. As I said earlier, I think the biggest difference for me between now and 2 years ago is I've learned how to pull more sounds out of each gong. And that's what it should be like with any gong you get. You learn it, you learn how it responds to your touch, to your mallets, and you work with it and you just unlock all the sounds. Okay, let's move on to bronze gong number 8, a completely new design. Such an interesting gong. When I first got it, it was very, very stiff. You can see we've got these concentric rings, which really stiffen the gong up. And the sound I was getting out of it was just a center tone. Playing out here, I really didn't get much because the gong was so stiff, but it gives a beautiful, dark, focused center tone. It's almost a chordal tone. You can hear, oh, there's a deep tone and some wouldn't crash like that when I first got it. So that is just working with it over time, getting the metal to relax some, having it just settle in, and I'm able to get much more of a crash out of it. But again, like number 4, it's still a compact crash because it's very rigid. These rings really stiffen it up. Now, I had the fortune of a few weeks ago, a friend of mine came over, Lou, and he happens to have a number 8, and he brought his number 8 with him so we could compare them. Now, one thing I've noticed is on a few of these models there are variations, and I'll put some pictures of his gong up. But if you see mine here, I've got these very heavily hammered rings that are rounded. On his, he has rings that are hammered in the center, like with a very pointed hammer instead of a rounded hammer. So they form V-shaped rings. Completely different design of the rings. But surprisingly, our gongs sounded almost identical in pitch, and they were acted very much the same in sound. I suspect this is an original version of this. It looks like the prototype that I've seen, and that they've refined it and figured out they didn't have to do this incredibly labor-intensive big, like a ball peen hammer on there, that they could make more of a wedge-shaped or a V-shaped and get the same effect. So check out the pictures and you can see the differences. The number 8, it's just a really intriguing gong. I love it for that, just that very focused. It's almost like a gamelan gong with a big boss on it. Here we are at the last one, number 9, doubled. On your left is the number 9 I got at Andy's Music when I went down there and opened up the Creative Gongs. Again, I picked it out because as much as I loved all the gongs, this had a sound that I already didn't have a gong to cover. I would have gladly got a number 1, but I already had an earth gong. So, that sound was covered. I already had the Sound Creation water gong, so I didn't go for the 2 or 4. I already had a Jupiter Planet gong, which sounded similar to the number 6, so it's like number 9, it offers something completely different that I don't have. It's very dark. It's very thin and responsive, and the big difference is it's got a very shallow rim for Paiste. Usually it'll come out, probably another inch or so. So it's a very responsive gong. When I got the crate and got the second one, originally my idea was, I'll sell one of them to help pay for all this crazy stuff, but the pitch and the response is so different that they're almost, they're very different gongs. They both have that number 9-ness, but as you'll hear, they're just really different gongs. So let's look at the first one I got from Andy's. It's got a fairly solid sound in the center. As we move out, we really pick up that nice crash sound with very little effort. love that, you know, as a part of my set, to really give that deep, dark, bottomy crash. There's no high white noise, nickel silver tones on top. It's just that very dark, very deep crash, which makes a nice contrast to having like a symphonic gong in my setup. I can get that nice crash, but it's a whole different kind. Okay, let's look at the number 9 that came with the set. They look almost identical. They have similar hammerings. I've seen number 9s with more or less hammering in the middle. They have the radial scraping that goes all the way from the center point to the edge. The edge is raised up slightly, not as much as like on a number 6 or a symphonic, just a little bit. So essentially it's a fairly flat gong. Well, listen to this one, a much darker gong. And it's much more responsive. Notice how that opened up right away. Just to compare, I'll hit this with about the same force. A little more there. This one I have to be careful with. It's extremely sensitive. And especially if I'm moving from a different gong to this one, I have to remember to back off some, because the same force will overpower this gong. Let's compare it again. You can hear that difference. I mean, this one stays fairly focused. We get that deep hum. Not so much overtones over here. It just blossoms right away. And that dark crash. But they both have that number 9 sound, and that's what you'll find in any of them. So again, you know, we could get 5 number 6s together. They will all sound like number 6. The pitch will vary, the response will vary. You know, any of these. But so these are both number 9s, and they sound like a number 9. Pitch is quite varied. They're a fourth apart, and we've got an F and a B, so they're a fourth apart. And just the response is so different. Now when you get them opened up, they sound very similar that way, because those upper mids take over. But just at a low volume, they respond and sound quite different in pitch. So there you go. 2 years on of having the Paiste Bronze Gongs. And it's meant a lot to me. It's changed my sound, obviously. I use 4 of them in my setup. My current setup is normally a 32-inch symphonic here, the number 0 here, over here the number 6, and then down below I have the number 2 with the really big center on it. Here I have a high-pitched number 9 over here, and then over here I have the original Sound Creation water gong. So I have a nice contrast with nickel silver, the brightness, that foamy highs, and then the bronze, which gives me that darkness and those foamy mids. And they're extraordinary. I love them. I feel like they made them just for me because they're the kind of sounds that I've always wanted. So I use them all the time. Thanks for checking out this video. I hope it was interesting. It's a journey. You know, you get gongs and they're an investment and you have them for years. And you just go on the path together and you learn about each other. They learn about you, you learn about them. And hopefully the sounds you can extract from them become more and more over time because you learn different ways of getting sounds. You end up getting different mallets. And also the gong learns to respond to your touch. So it's really a two-way thing. So keep working at it. Have fun. That's the biggest thing of this. I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't fun. It's a lot of stuff to haul around and maintain and take care of, but it's a blast. So thanks for watching. We will see you next time.